Welcome to this new episode of Unleashed. In the previous episode, we championed a technology leader and we celebrated his transformation. We reflected with Sudhir and Dileep in the previous episode. If the limitation was more around technology leaders or the limitations were those imposed by the environment. Clearly, we concluded that the technology leaders themselves have a great potential. They are not the limitation, but the environment itself demands them to work in a particular way, and therefore their complete potential is not fully leveraged. However, we also reflected that the purpose of many organizations, which is to deliver on time, on budget, and build that predictability experience with the customers, the backbone of such experience, the backbone of delivering such predictability was largely because of the depth and the talent of these technology leaders. We concluded the session saying that even when such environment is imposing limitations to work only in certain contexts, the technology leaders can still innovate, can still deliver higher value to the customer. In this episode, we will reflect again with Sudhir and Dileep around those possibilities of delivering higher value, delivering better results to the customer, and being sounding boards to the customer, even in environments where there are limitations and restrictions put on the technology leaders. As I reflected this question, how they can innovate within this environment, I referred back to my very important framework, which is a framework around outcomes model. Listen to my discussions with Sudhir around the concept of the outcomes framework and what, if any, depending on what outcomes the companies are committing to, if there is any restrictions with the way the technology leaders can innovate. If you remember my framework, I had this framework of what kind of outcomes we own with the customer, where at the lowest end, you can provide resources. The next level, you take orders from the customer, deliver to the orders, where predictability is your requirement. And as we go up the value chain, you are committing to goals, or you're also suggesting goals to the customer. Now, when you go higher up the value chain, you have to create opportunities with the customer. That means you have to go and tell them what they don't know. And that's how you go to market. Whereas here you're waiting for customer to say, I have a problem, you work on this problem for me. So there are two ends of the spectrum. I think I have seen that people who are working where they have to create opportunities, their technology leaders' ability is fully leveraged because they have to go and think ahead of the customer needs, and that's the way the company functions. So you're talking about the environment in which they have. So they're constantly asking, what will you go to market next with? What will make this customer have competitive edge? Versus here, the environment is more about the measurements, are more about are you on time, on budget, predict, which is very important. But I think the discussions and the social gatherings only will talk about this on time, on budget, and being predictable. So I think just expanding what you're saying is the change. What is the culture of discussions? What is the environment of discussions? What are the things the environment demands from you is also something very important. I think, and unless that go-to-market changes, this is not likely to change. Is that something good thing to probably reflect on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think syntax matters in leadership thinking, right? The grammar of that session is important. Am I in past tense? Am I in the present? Or am I in future tense? And as a leader, you're expected to be able to straddle all three modes of operation. So to your point, what then do you do as a leader? And what mind frame do you need to get to? If it doesn't, normally, if the conversations are around history, right, we will be discussing history because that is the topic of interest.
Yeah.
And that topic is important because I want to look into my past and then come to what I'm doing. Often that is a very classic to say, I shipped 1 million units. I want to ship again 1 million units. So I walk into my history, I watch my history, and I can grow in my history and just manage the history. In my present tense, I have forces that I reckon with in my present tense. I guess environments that we are living in are subject to the volatility of the day. And now we are looking at various modes in which we deal with the current tense, which is active, or if you've been a little more circumspect and reflective that you can bring your history in, you will now respond rather than just react. So that is a maturation that is critical. Now, when you switch the conversation to tomorrow, then I'm combining these two states. I'm also shifting out of that state where I paint a forward situation and I need that ability, or I will bring a team that has the ability to be futurist is one way of looking at it. Future proofing is another way of looking at it. And building into a future is also another way of looking at it. So the ability to say that, articulate it, state it, translate that into policy, process, people coming through. Then the leader is looking at three dimensions at the same time. And to your point, environment does play its role, whether it's inculcating the ability of anybody, not just the leader, because the leader is only as good as their followers. Right? It's your followership that actually determines whether you're a leader or not. And so therefore, this context needs to be in the followership. If you build your followership with these dimensions and with these personas that actually deliver to these various states. Now, because each personality also needs that ability to deliver to these states. After a team is what a leader puts together.
Yeah.
It's not just one's own self that we need to be worried about. We need to also see what we get done. Yeah. And in that context, now when you bring it to the external party, so to speak, whom you're now contracting this team's effort to a customer, now you wear your hat of being consultative for the future, operative or reporting for today, and be reflective on what happened yesterday. So now when I move this conversation to the customer, the idea of I can watch cost, because that's like a historic picture. I can also look at value, which is something that's evolving. And I can do value minus, from cost plus to value minus in an accounting or CFO's term, or a managerial term, would be essentially this drift that you're asking for. And what are the sort of compelling factors for it? I think it's a lot to do with environment. The environment you generate.
Very interestingly, the leader who transformed built this cohort of team around him. We start challenging the status quo. We started looking at things from the new lens, not just executing, but they were having this drawback and saying, what are we doing? What are we learning from each of these things? How do we take it to the next level? And I think that part of his transformation journey, which is, I'm something very proud of what he's made the change, called his whole team to be working with him. And then he started creating those leaders below him who can actually start challenging the status quo, bring more ideas, because it's then I think it becomes much more like it's that multiplying effect was phenomenal. I was sharing with Sudhir the progress the leader I worked with made. The progress not only in terms of changing the approach to adding value to the customer, but also the progress in terms of proactively managing internal demands and requirements. Like Sudhir had mentioned, the change was not possible for my leader as well without the support of his team. There was a great change in the team. There was a great change in the way the team rallied around him, brought new energy and perspectives. I'm going to play an excerpt from the book which highlights this transformation. In this excerpt, you would listen to interactions between the leader I coached and his team, deliberating on how they can bring new value to the customer, deliver better solution to the customer, as well as proactively manage internal demands of higher margins. Rakesh reflected on Ram's words. You have no choice but to make it work. His natural reaction to any new challenge was to protest, resist, or avoid. Every new challenge caused deep unrest, fueled uncomfortable emotions. Ram showed a new way of looking at these situations. Rakesh was surprised by his own enthusiasm for addressing the problem and realized he didn't experience any of his usual fears and restlessness. The inbound proposal needed a different approach. They were a consumer durable company requiring a new dealer management system implemented across different geographies. The project focus was to improve distribution visibility with real-time data, centralized control over distribution, and effective inventory management. Jeet and his team had pushed back on the initial estimates, saying they were way above the customer's budget. Margins were already lower than accepted level, and then there was the huge risk of additional scope demands and delays at the customer's end. Gupta recommended Ramya lead the efforts to build the proposal. She was known for her out-of-box solutions, building excellent relationships that made everyone feel part of the solution. She also had strong project management capabilities. Ramya created a cross-functional team of Swati from package implementation, Farooq from testing, Sudhir from maintenance, and Ravi from infrastructure group. They explored several options: a template-based rollout, bundling testing as a part of implementation, and taking a lifecycle management approach. We have limited opportunities for reducing our efforts based on the current assumption of customized deployment for each dealer, said Ramya, initiating the meeting. However, if we take a template-driven centralized approach, we can reduce the efforts substantially. Interesting, said Rakesh. How many variations in dealer type should we consider? Essentially, there are three models based on the scope, size, and financial engagement Inban has with the dealer. Since we are rolling out to 6 countries, we'll end up with 18 templates to configure and deploy. That's still too many templates, said Rakesh. By how much does this approach reduce our efforts? Nearly 40% of our original estimates, Ramya stepped in. Wow, that's a lot of reduction, said Rakesh. Well below the limits Jeet specified. Are you really sure? Yes, Rakesh, Ramya nodded. We have been over it few times. I got Atul and Gupta to go over it before this meeting. Interesting, said Rakesh. So there is still room for us to do more within Jeet's budget. He turned to Swati. Based on your understanding, can we offer better leverage of functionality to the customer? Yes, of course, Rakesh, Swati responded. Based on their specifications, they are under-leveraging the features, particularly in inventory management. If they leverage these features, they have huge potential to reduce stockouts. Maybe the data quality isn't good enough for them to leverage these features currently. Excellent work, Rakesh congratulated the team. We could explore adding these additional features and still remain within the budget. That's entirely possible, said Ramya. We were thinking of bundling testing within the savings, which we believe will reduce the overall maintenance cost. We feel we should propose a life cycle approach rather than a pure implementation and rollout. We can also bundle maintenance and infrastructure management and bring down the overall life cycle cost while increasing the project's effectiveness. Wonderful, Rakesh clapped. I love the way you come up with comprehensive solutions. Let me go through the details. I want to think about the best way to take it forward. I'll also sound off Jeet and take his views. Rakesh was very excited. He was experiencing renewed passion for solving customers' problems. He had rediscovered his passion for technology. For the first time, he wasn't seeking approval, but focusing on providing the right solution. He was so engrossed in the team's approach and working on improving the solution that it took Anita's call for him to realize it was past 10 p.m. Clearly, from the excerpt, you can see the enthusiasm among the team to continuously look at new value they can add to the customer. You can also see their approach in managing internal demands of higher margin, internal demands of lesser efforts, internal demands of being more productive. And the entire thing was not being a reactive way, but they all become very, very proactive in managing the internal demands as well. Then I reflected with Dileep, what does it take for a technology leader to be more innovative?
Yeah, I think, if I may want to talk about the success of technology leaders, quite highly depends on how much of customer interaction people have. I think for their success, many a times, the success can be measured in different ways. People measure success in terms of, what position I'm in and what I'm doing versus, how much of impact being created through my role.
Exactly.
Right. I think for impact creation for technology leaders, it always comes in the form of, how much of customer connect points you are able to create and customer impact points you are able to create through your presence and through your actions. We created a couple of examples of two customer collaborations, looking at a couple of customer problems and how these customer problems can be solved. And getting those doctors to come and talk about their problems. And these eyes of people opened so wide that, wow, I never knew that this is possible. Then also the messaging. Unless people are connected with a purpose. And if you put the purpose of the organization as our purpose is to make profit by delivering your goals of executing on time, on cost, on quality, people will only focus on that.
Right.
But if you put a purpose, as we pioneer breakthroughs for healthcare industry, for everyone, everywhere, it is a totally different purpose. And when they connect with purpose, I think it changes the game. We used to tell people that, look, when you're writing a code, have you ever thought what this code does? They will say, no, I'm just trying to transform this into this.
Just okay, that's all he knows.
Yeah, this is a technology piece I'm trying to do. Now, try to understand this at a system level. Now, imagine right in front of your computer, there is a patient sleeping. And this code is going to help a scanning machine to scan him to find out if there is any cancerous cells in his body. Now imagine how will you write this code if there is a patient sleeping right in front of you. What is going to be your mindset? Are you writing a healthcare formula or are you writing a software code? You are writing a healthcare formula.
Absolutely.
Then your purpose changes. The moment purpose changes, they want to be more curious. And they want to understand more. Then, setting up connects for them with hospitals, seeing a surgery happening or connecting with radiologists who are scanning a patient and then understanding how they look at it, how they scan it, how they understand what is wrong. It changes the whole context. And suddenly the curiosity goes up.
Yeah, purpose has changed.
Purpose has changed.
It's not rested at making some unit testing of some code. Yeah. It is a purpose that it is actually end applied. That's a brilliant story. But one of the things I see, like, for example, I think this ability to fail has been tightly tightened up because it's very lightly run. I'm shifting to services companies. If I look at Indian IT services companies, we talk about we are working on all cutting edge technologies, but our price demand in the market has not changed. Most of the Indian IT companies, if I'm following it, are around $45,000 to $55,000 per person per annum for the last 15 years.
Correct.
So that means and these are tightly run, on time, on budget, predictability very, very, very high.
Yeah.
Done. So you can't miss that numbers, you can't miss the margins, you can't miss it's a very that run because it's very finance run companies.
Correct.
Headroom to experiment and change, headroom to go back and challenge the customer saying, like I was walking, is very limited. And therefore, people are this become more of a factory.
Right.
And the leaders managing that is a factory, like saying how many shipments are going out today, are they going on time? So the curiosity of what they're working is gone, not there. The change you are talked about in a product development environment where you're transforming, there is a structural changes you have brought, your leadership has changed some things. How do you think these companies can now benefit? Because they also should command more. We should change, because some of these troops are now, if I take those troops into your organization, they come from a process background. Will they be able to scale up to work on the way you are demanding? They're all used to just working and finishing their job for the day and walk away without really curious about it. The people leading them are also running it like troops, because thousands of 10,000, 20,000, 2 lakhs, some companies are running.
Correct.
How do we bring that kind of a change in those technology leaders?
I think, definitely I have seen some of the companies do this. I remember at that time it was Satyam, now Tech Mahindra. I used to work with the GE. And I used to be part of GE Consumer Industrial. And for appliances especially, they had picked up, they basically said, you give me the problem, we will solve it. They went from being giving a problem package to, they said, okay, give me entire thing that needs to be done.
The entire outcome.
Yeah, I will do that. I will invest in innovation. I will invest in lab. I will invest in experiments. If it doesn't happen, I will take the cost, hit. And in fact, they used to really look at adding more people without really saying that I'm not going to charge you anything for this 10 people who will work on it. But I'll come back with that. During about 4 or 5 years, I observed it very closely when that team was working. They became so good in actually taking those challenges. Some of the entire product, in terms of whether it is cost out or creating a new feature, sometimes it was all completely given to these teams. And they used to also get some customer connects along with, it was something I felt was a culture that was driven between GE at that time, appliances, and Tech Mahindra, where they trusted each other.
I think in general, a lot of them are not doing it, but I think there are pockets. So what it says that if there is a right institutional support, if there is a right go-to-market, like in this case, Tech Mahindra is talking about they're owning an outcome rather than just owning, I'll deliver on your predictability specs. They're owning an outcome. They want to deliver it. If there is that, I think we have talent that can make it happen. Today, I think most of the technology leaders are constrained by how the organizations are limiting them.
Correct. And I strongly believe about the talent here. Talent is there. You need to challenge them.
And I think organizations have to go to market differently, own better outcomes.
Correct.
And I think they have to, at least some pocket, maybe IT industry can take small pilots where they can do like this Tech Mahindra kind of thing, and then say, I can be successful. So you're throwing people at different problems and not just managing capacity, not just running process. If I can summarize the discussions with Dileep, one aspect Dileep talks about access to the customer, the ability to experience how the customer puts the product to use. For any good technology professional, that insight, that experience of the environment will definitely help him to have a better understanding, and therefore he can leverage his technical capabilities to build a more innovative and more superior product and provide a solution which is more effective to his customer. The other aspect Dileep brought about, specifically in the case of the services company, is that the go-to-market, the ability to own better outcomes, commit to better outcomes, would mean that the technology professionals can now take more ownership of the solution they are putting together, which means, again, that they will tap into their capabilities and abilities to bring out more innovative and more effective solutions. So both dimensions are very crucial. access to customer environment, and understanding of how the product is put to use, as well as better go-to markets, a better ownership of outcomes. And I think this becomes the backbone for any technology professional to provide more innovative solutions. My conversations with Sudhir threw up a very different dimension of how new generations are bringing different approaches and how the norm is getting challenged. I grew up in an environment where I always looked up to somebody above me to saying, oh, I want to become like this guy. The way he challenges a question, the way he looks at a problem. That's the way I grew up in my entire journey as a professional. But the middle-level heroes today, who are very technically deep, don't have careers. In most of the companies, unless they manage large number of people, an architect cannot become the president of the company. Or very rarely they have such roles to grow up there. So these guys drop these capabilities of being technically deep. Like they start becoming more generalists, more managing routines, looking at things, those kind of things. And so therefore, these middle-level heroes to whom we can look up to are becoming lesser and lesser in most of the organization. And when they become 2 lakhs people, 3 lakhs people organizations, these middle-level heroes are the ones who are going to put it together to inspire the next level, to start thinking differently. And as you said, it has to come from a collective team. I think that is a missing area, and how do we bring that back into across the industry? Something I always keeps intriguing me, and maybe want to take your thoughts around it.
I think one of the elements that you need to think about whether the environment incentivizes a flexible movement of competencies, and therefore this notion of the middle, which is stuck in not being in the beginning and not being in the endpoint, whether the middle gets caught in the middle. And therefore, what should the environment do in order to drive the middle to be different and seek more, be more? So if I look at, for example, I get my inspiration, like you said, not from somebody who's above me, theoretically now. At 62, I look at the 30-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, the middle heroes.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm saying is the backgrounds they come from, you would normally say they do not have the competency, they do not have the capacity, they don't understand what's core, potentially. I'm saying all of this. But when I meet an entrepreneur who's significantly younger, half my age, what comes out is that they rethink ab initio what is capacity, is competency. And so when a 26-year-old comes and says, I want to break your understanding of norm. And then I'm going to say, so what are you going to do? Are you going to just reform from the norm? Are you going to wait and form before you can reform? And then when do you actually go and do transform? And at one point of time, is it because you're 26, you can't be consultative and go straight to value minus? And I would reckon that every one of our leaders that we work with, age is not even a relevance. Neither the notion of where did you come from. What they don't worry about is past. They're allowing themselves to drop their past and work towards a future, write down a future, and work at it. You can fail at it. But they don't hesitate. The attempt to be the future, in the famous saying, be the change you want to see, in yourself as well as anywhere outside as well. But being the change is actually a lot to do with the environment. Who allowed you to do that, right? So sometimes the parents don't allow it, yet you break out. Some friends will poo your idea. So you'll say, okay, I'll break out my friends. It doesn't matter who stops you. There are always going to be forces that are going to be allowing you to revert to the norm. They will say that's where you belong. But my sense is none of these classic tags that we use, age, what position are you in, critical to seek that requisite environment. I need a coach, I'll take a coach. I need another friend, I'll take another friend. Another person reporting into me, I will take another boss. And that, I think, allows individuals then to lead their self, being your proprietor of yourself. I've always been taught about this idea of a contract. You are the sole proprietor of your life. That's no doubt about it. You contract your life with society at large. and then various environments in order to contribute to them with an evolving competency and an evolving capacity. Therefore, the nature of the contract has the potential to unleash what you contract. I love what you called it, unleashed.
Yeah.
So the leash of the contract of being the sole proprietor of your life is yourself.
Yeah.
So when you open that leash, you then say, I am okay with contracting. Now, in that contract, often it is defining scope of work to not fall short. But if you don't push the edge, or you don't lose, or you don't work towards expanding the nature of the contract, or the nature of the scope of work, or the scope of deliverable from yourself. And that, to your question, is can I do that with clients? And if I'm a sole proprietor, I can do that with a fellow employee, my boss, my junior, or a client. That is limiting in its theoretically limiting at that point in time. I'm less worried about it. I will contract with an NGO to be of service to you. I don't want any economic interest in it.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. It's that ability to say, I can expand, I can be flexible, I can contract downwards if I need to. I'm not using the word contract as a noun. And that, I think, allows individuals then to lead their self, being your proprietor of yourself.
What a fascinating idea of your sole proprietor of your own life, and you're contracting in different dimensions, contracting with the society, contracting with your boss, contracting with your family, and your ability to probably live your full potential is ability to probably push these boundaries and find the right resources to push these boundaries wherever you require. So this is a very phenomenal idea, I think, for all of us to take back and reflect and saying, where are we constrained? What resources we need to push our own boundaries and to be at our innovative best. We also reflected with Sudhir about the role of middle leaders, middle-level management, and his perspectives were more around his heroes being the new age entrepreneurs coming with no leashes on them, with the complete energy to create a future which they imagine. I think this is so much so true about the startup world, the innovative world we are living in today's world. So many new businesses, so many new ideas are being created. And as he says, it's definitely the young generation which are now the new inspiration. However, in the larger organizations, the role of the middle management is very critical. The role of the middle management plays the bridging role between the top leadership and the people who execute. And these roles are very critical in terms of ensuring that there is a sense of innovation, there is a sense of challenge being created at both ends. We will reflect about the role of middle management as when we talk about how do you institutionalize innovation, how do you bring in structures where I think while delivering to the core, we can still innovate and deliver better value to the customer. If we now step back and reflect on this episode, we started with this episode reflecting about how technology leaders can still innovate in an environment where core is the main purpose. And yet, while delivering the core, how could they set aside time and still deliver to better values, better innovation for the customers, and live in that outside-in purpose? The context of my discussion with Sudhir was around the outcome framework I champion, the outcome framework which talks about different levels of outcome one can own. Historically, a lot of the outcomes owned have remained at providing resources or delivering to specifications. But as the outcomes go ahead, delivering to goals set by the customer or goals being set by the service provider, the ability of the technology leaders to deliver to those outcomes and have that ability to influence the customer decision has been higher. When reflecting with Sudhir, I think he talks about this change where a leader's role has to be balanced between learning from the past, learning what improvements can be done from the past, learning the ability to manage the constraints of the present and deliver to the requirements and have that ability to look into the future and bring in innovation. But that ability to deliver across these three dimensions and straddle these three dimensions also requires strong team to support the leader on all the three dimensions. We reflected with Sudhir around this about how the leader I had coached build that kind of a team which could help him to bring in better value and innovation to the customer. We then reflected with Dileep how access to customer, access to the outcomes, how the product is put to use can change the perspectives of the technology people, technology leaders to actually add value, have the change of purpose and deliver to the end user the product than just the software code. Dileep talks about an excellent example from services industry where the ability to own a better outcome and better go-to markets from the services company meant that they could work proactively and deliver higher value to the customer. We also reflected about the norms being changed by the young generation, which is coming with full of ideas and energy, which is redefining the future, how they are becoming the heroes and they are becoming the role models. Perhaps the need for change of middle-level people, middle-level leadership to ensure that they provide the right bridge between the young technology leaders and the customers. In the coming episode, we can reflect on how can we build institutions, institutional practices from the experiences of Dileep, from the experiences of another leader we are bringing in, Sanjay Salonki, to explore what are the institutional interventions, institutional experiences of sustaining this innovation on a consistent and more regular basis.